and I'm the Sales and Support Lead for Appraiser Genie. We did have quite a few more sign up, but I'm not sure if people are running behind today, but regardless, you'll be able to see this video later online at www.appraisergenie.com. If you guys want to access our website, click on the training tab later. You will be able to see this at any point. Feel free to share this video with your office, do whatever you need to get the word around as far as you using it yourself. Now I'm going to mute everyone, and I tend to mute everyone during the demo just because I want to keep on track. But by any means, if you guys have any questions, you can send me a chat as we go through, or at the end I will hold a little Q&A session and I will be happy to answer any questions you have. Alright, so to get started, what you see on my screen is the MLS setup process, and basically the only setup requirement for you to use Appraiser Genie is, one, you have to be a total all-mode user or an Appraise It user or ACI. Now ACI is still they haven't officially released yet, but if you guys want to give it a whirl, so to speak, with ACI, you can. You still need to have your MLS mapped, and what that means to you is when you log into your MLS searches have to be compatible with our software. And basically what we do is we create a custom export, which is just basically a template. And we just tell your MLS we need this file here, or excuse me, this field here in this order, etc. And all you do is log into your MLS, you'll create a search, and then you're going to save that on your computer in a file. Later on we'll import that into Appraiser Genie, and that's going to be your neighborhood information, your high-low predominant one-unit housing trends will be based off of your MLS search. Later on you can narrow that down further, which will provide your 1004C, your true comp search, which I'll explain that as we go. So for example, I'm going to go to my file. This is a file that I saved. I logged into Intrace, which is a Texas MLS. We're in Abilene, Texas. And all I did was created a search based on my subject. I did a 2-mile radius. I narrowed it to single-family homes. I went back at least 1 year. I grabbed my sold, active, pendings, all of that information, because that is your neighborhood boundaries. And all you need to define in your MLS is your neighborhood boundaries. So you're going to see down here, I have over 200 comps in here, and this is just my entire neighborhood. So that's all you're responsible for, is just creating the neighborhood search on your MLS. You save that search to your computer, and we will import this later on. So if you have not had your MLS mapped yet, you need to contact our MLS team. You would need to email mls@appraisergenie.com. We offer this for free. You don't have to send us any information. We'll set up a template for you. Therefore, from now on, when you use the Genie, you will be compatible. There are a few MLSs that do not require a setup, meaning if you use HAR, which is Houston, our MLS, RealTrax, and North Star, I believe. Those are 4 MLSs that no setup is required. So you can just contact our sales team, and then we can walk you through the program. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way. Now, what I have done is I have a report already open in Total, which you'll see here. And you're going to see it's pretty bare bones. There's a lot of information that's not in here purposely, because I wanted to show you guys what's required when you start the report. So everything that's filled out is required. It has to be in the report before you start Genie. So we're going to go back up to page 1. I have the address here, city, state, zip, and county. I skipped pretty much the rest of this part. I left the 1-unit housing trends blank. I left the 1-unit housing low-high predom. This will be filled out for you guys later, and this is based off of this file I showed you, my MLS neighborhood search. This information is going to make up what I see right here. So it's very important that you guys correctly import the MLS search. If you don't do that correctly, then these numbers would be incorrect. So we'll scroll down. Some of this information I have filled out, such as detached, existing, ranch, year built. This information is needed and it's necessary. I indicated heating and cooling, just general information, fireplace, if it has a patio deck, porch, and if I know the exterior walls, roof surface, floors. You don't have to have this information in here, but it is helpful to buildingcosts.net. Same thing with my driveway or garage count. I indicate that there. And the only remaining information I need is this subject column here on page 2. You want to fill out as much of this as you can. This information actually gets into buildingcosts.net, and they return the total replacement cost to us. So the more accurate this information is, obviously the more accurate the cost approach will be and your adjustment support, etc. I left the market conditions addendum empty. We complete that for you guys. I left cost approach empty, minus the dwelling, of course. And later on we'll go through that and I'll show you how everything's filled in for you. Okay, so if you're just now arriving in the room, don't worry, as stated, this video will be found on our website, appraisergenie.com. Just click on the training tab. And what we're going to do now, since I've already logged in my MLS, I already did a neighborhood search and saved it, we want to go ahead and start Genie. So on the right-hand side, you have a button stating Dashboard. We're going to click on this. Now, if you're a brand new user, you will not see Appraiser Genie here. To actually install it, you have to first go to the Total store. You'll want to click Launch there. And towards the middle of the page under Partner Products, you'll see our icon. So we'll go ahead and click Appraiser Genie. Now, of course, if you're a new user, please sign up for the 10 free trials on us. We give you guys 10 free because it does take a couple of reports to get used to it and kind of train your mind as to how Genie works versus what you do. So definitely sign up for this. After that, once you're out of usage, you'll come back to the Total store and purchase either $5, $45, or $100. Depends on your workload. Now we're going to close this because I've already done this step. So what will happen is you will enter your a la mode information, your email and password. It's going to tell you thank you for your purchase. You'll come back to your Total dashboard. You're going to close it and simply relaunch it, and then you'll be at the point where I am, where it says Appraiser Genie. The only difference is it's going to say download instead of launch. You'll quickly run our installation, which takes less than a minute, and then come back to dashboard, close it one more time, and then it will say launch like mine does. If you need any help with this, you can give us a phone call. It's very easy installation. So now that we're ready, once we have a report open that we want to use with the Genie, we're going to click on Launch. Okay, so we're going to choose a currently open report. Just make sure you have the right report selected if you have more than one open, and we will click OK. Now Genie is cloud-based, therefore Genie will automatically launch and open with whatever you have set as your default web browser. We recommend Chrome, which is what you'll see down here. Genie open in Chrome. That is a much better browser. That is typically the browser we test with in Office. If you use Internet Explorer, I can't guarantee it will work correctly. So I would use Chrome or Firefox. Okay, so what you see here is the actual sign-in page. Now, I already have an email and password. I've used this, of course, 1,000 times. For brand new users, you're going to want to go down here and click on registration below. That will enable you to create a password and create an email, and that's just used for us as a customer database. Now, I'm not going to do that. I already have an email and password, so that is shown here. I'm just going to go ahead and click Submit. Okay, so we'll let that load. Now it should move faster for you guys. When people are remoted into my computer, that sort of thing, it slows down a little bit. And what I'm going to start with is these tabs at the across the top of the page. We want to set up our defaults first. I've already done that for my login, but I'm going to show you guys how to do it as if you've never set it up before. So you'll have a forward and backward arrow. These are the tabs you use to navigate. So we want to click this arrow all the way over. And at the very end, you see a tab in blue. It says Defaults. We want to click on this. And if you're a brand new user, you're actually taken to the defaults page automatically. So this is the page you guys would just see automatically. You'll have a terms of service agreement. It's a little pop-up box. All you have to do is agree to the information, enter your initials, and you'll see what I see here. Now, firstly, make sure your software is correct. A la mode, if you use Total, if you use ACI, Appraiser, ClickForms, make sure you have the correct software set. They all work differently. We're going to go with a la mode. Below are defaults that you can set up to better kind of tailor your report. So for example, concessions here. These blue question marks, they help you. They kind of tell you what to do. Enter the maximum percentage of concessions. That's customary for your area. So for example, if 3% is typically customary, then you would put a 3 here. Anything over that percentage would automatically be adjusted for. Or if you're like me and you leave a 0 here, you just want to adjust for all concessions reported. So I'm going to leave that as a 0, and that of course means percentage. Age variance works kind of similar. You don't have to make an adjustment for all age difference subject to comp. Let's say you don't typically adjust maybe for the first 5 years difference subject to comp. You can put a 5 here, and anything over the 5 years age difference will automatically be adjusted. Anything under or over, we will skip. So if your comp, let's say it is 2010, of course, and you put a 5, we'll go as low as 2005, as high as 2015. Anything in that range we don't adjust for. Anything outside of that we will adjust for. Same thing with site size. Let's say you don't typically adjust for maybe 30% site size variance subject to comp. You can put a 30 there. Anything over that 30% site size difference we'll give you an adjustment for, and then we just basically skip the first 30%, and that's how these three work. If you're not sure, you need more clarification, once again, these little blue question marks, they'll help you as well. Okay, this is your subject previous sale years prior and your comp previous sales years prior. The 3 here is standard. You'll typically always see a 3. For the comp previous sales years prior, you can leave that as a 1. If you do want to go farther back, maybe it's an FHA, whatever the case is, you can change that to a 3 or just leave that as a 1. Okay, you have your minimum square foot to adjust. Whatever number you indicate here, we will not give you a GLA adjustment for. So for example, if you don't typically adjust for maybe the first 50 square foot difference or the 100, you can put that here, and then anything over that we will adjust for as far as GLA. Adjustment rounding, you're basically telling Genie how precise you want the rounding to be. Do you want us to round up to the next 100, 500, or 1,000? Of course, if you want it more precise, I would set it to 100. Comp export sort order, whatever you select here, that is the order the comps will be exported to the report. So if you naturally ordered them by close date, maybe contract date, sales price, whatever you click here, that's how it will be displayed here in the grid, depending on how you set it. I'm going to leave it as close date, which is pretty typical. Okay, effective age, reconciled value, and calculated adjustments. These all have checkboxes next to them which indicate they're optional. So for example, if you don't want us to provide a subject effective age adjustment, maybe you want to do that on your own, you have your own method, whatever the case is, you can deselect it. You will do that later in your own report, or you can leave it there and we will provide it for you. Same thing with reconciled value. Same thing with calculated adjustments. Maybe you don't typically make a sprinkler adjustment or a gate, whatever the case is, you can deselect them. National Association of Home Builders, this is a national average for constructing a home, the cost for a single family cost breakdown. Now this percentage is actually used later on for GLA, so it will round up to 62% out of the total replacement cost, which will be contributed to GLA. If you have any further questions, you just right-click on this and go to Open Link in New Tab, and that will open their website, and it's updated automatically. So anytime they update it, this number will update for you. MLS acronym. Now, as stated earlier, for those of you who have never used Genie or have never had it set up, we map your MLS to a specific acronym because it's so different across the nation. So for example, ABOR is Austin Board of Realtors, Intrace is North Texas, and then CRAR is Cedar Rapids. So you will just put the acronym of the MLS you use in this box 1, and of course if you use more than one, you'll just listen to the side. You can go as high as 8. Just make sure you guys don't try to run the Genie before we set it up for you, unless, like I said, you're one of the MLSs I mentioned earlier that doesn't require setup. Now the following fields, these pretty much fill out the comp grid as completely as possible. Most of this information, your MLS nor public records, they do not return this. So instead of leaving the fields blank in the comp grid, you can set something here, and that's what we'll export to the report. So for example, under verification source, I have MLS assessor and then doc number. So if we go back to the report here, under verification source, it's going to say MLS assessor, doc number, and we'll pull the doc number. You don't have to use what we put in these boxes. Just remember, if it needs to be retrieved, like doc number, we have to have one of these in the drop-down boxes, because these are things we can actually pull and put in the report. If you put something outside of here unique to you, you can type in whatever you want here, and that's what will show up in the grid. Now, doc number, you don't have to use that. Maybe use list price, whatever you want. You can just set that there. If you leave it blank, it's just going to be blank. So the reason there's a blank row 1 and 2 and 3 is you can have up to 3 different things that go in that field. Just remember there's only so much space. So for rights, it's going to show fee simple. So for every comp in my comp grid or report grid, it will say fee simple. If I leave the location rating to neutral and the location factor to neutral, then in the report here, it's always going to say neutral residential. So you can change that. That's pretty much the easiest way to set something here. There is a drop down if it's not residential. Maybe you have more golf course, whatever the case is, you can set that there. Or you can click the blank space and you can write your own whatever you want to be displayed in there. I'm just going to leave it on residential for now. For example, functional utility, there is a drop-down box. If you want to use one we provide here, go ahead, just click on it. Or if you want it to say something else, I typed in DP/installation. So when it exports to my report grid for functional utility, it's going to say DP installation across the board. Same thing with porch and patio. If you do put something in this box, that's going to export to the report period. Most MLSs don't actually clarify if it has a porch or patio, or if it's a covered porch, covered patio, whatever the case is. You can just leave this box blank, and then once you get back in the report, you can enter your own porch and patio info, or if you have a lot of covered porch maybe, or whatever the case is, you can type that there, and this is what will show up in the report for you for porch and patio. Now, that's going to show up regardless since we don't verify it. If it's easier for you just simply to leave it blank in the Genie and do it later, I would recommend that, so that's why I have this blank here. Okay, blank row 1, blank row 2, blank row 3. This refers to the 3 blanks at the bottom of the grid. You'll see I have fireplace here. I have row 2 empty and pool 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set Genie for blank row 1 to pull fireplaces. So straight across my comps, fireplaces will be here and the adjustment will be there. And pull, I'm going to set that in row 3, and if my subject has a pull or my comps, that will go here. Now I purposely put fireplace in row 1 and pull in row 3 because the adjustments will always go into this blank row. So if you ever want a fireplace adjustment, it will always show up right here. Same thing with pull. Pull will always go in row 3. So we'll go back, and which is why I have fireplace here, pull here. Blank row 2, I don't really care what goes in there. I'm probably going to do that later anyway. And if you want more than one thing in each blank, you can do so. So for example, going back to that fireplace in row 1, let's say not only do I want fireplace, I want in-law. If you click on fireplace and in-law, then right down here, it's going to say this now. And if we can retrieve in-law information, that will just be entered in this blank row 1 across. You can type your own information, it's just we have to have a way to actually pull it. So if you put shed here, it's just going to say shed across the board since we don't have a lot of MLSs that tell us if there's a shed. Or you can choose from these drop-down boxes, and if they're in the drop-down, then 99% out of 100, we can pull this from the MLS, so you can just choose something here. Alright, so lastly here, public record verification. Later on when you choose the comps you want to use for the report, you can tell Genie for site, go ahead and automatically use whatever public reports, whatever MLS reports, or a peer database. If you're not sure what to use, leave it on Ask Me, and then we'll show you what each source reports later. So later on, if there's a discrepancy, let's say public says for site for a particular comp it's 1 acre, and let's say MLS says 1.3, and maybe our peer says 1 acre. Well, those are a discrepancy because they reported differently. If you leave it on Ask Me, we'll show you what they all said. Or you can just tell Genie, go ahead and just rely on public, rely on MLS or peer. Now just remember, peer depends on how many appraisers use Genie in your area. I don't have a list of that. I'm sure we can get one. But if you set something to peer and there's nothing in our peer database, it's going to be blank. You'll have to manually pull that up later. So I don't recommend that. Maybe if you're in California, Texas, one of our states that has a lot of customers, I would do that. For the most part, I recommend MLS or public records. So for site, I'm going to go ahead and just put on public, and a few of these I'm going to leave it on Ask Me so you can see how it looks later. Okay, column order. What this means to you, once again, when you choose the comps for the report, you can decide how the information is displayed for each comparable. So for example, all this information is going to be displayed for every comp, and I particularly want to see site immediately. I want age right behind that, followed by GLA, year built, and sales price. You can move this around. For example, if you want to click on maybe owner, you can move it up or down, and it's going to put it in the order in which it's displayed here. So let's say I want maybe a bed's farther up. I could just click on it, and later on when you're looking through the comps, you'll see this order reflected the way you have it set here. Now if that doesn't make sense right now, it's okay. I'll refer back to this later. Now we've reached to the end of the page. We're just going to scroll back to the top, and after every change we make, we want to click Save. Just remember, if you don't click Save, all these changes I made will not apply. So we're going to wait until that loads. Now there are additional tabs here. I will briefly go over them. There's an abbreviation tab. What this means is these are the abbreviations that will be entered into the report. So for example, if the comp has Cool Central, we will indicate CAC. If it has Heat Forced Air, we'll say FWA. These are the UAD abbreviations we default to use. If you don't want to use these, for example, maybe Cool Central, you don't put CAC, maybe you want something like that. You can type whatever you want in the box, and that's what's going to show up here in your grid for heating and cooling or whatever you change. I prefer to just use UAD, so I'm going to leave that as CAC. Comments. We do fill out quite a few comments in the report. There are headers here that tell you where the comment goes. This is your cost approach site comment. 1004MC is here. So right under the 1004MC for your concession comment, this will auto-populate for you. Anything in brackets, that just refers to data we pull for every report. So we'll pull the subject MLS, the sales quantity, the concessions percentage, concessions predominant, etc. You don't have to use these by any means. You could actually erase these and write your own, or if you're an appraiser, maybe you have templates where you already have predefined comments. You can copy and paste them into this box, and we'll use whatever you want. The cool thing about our comments, though, is you can add as much backup or data as you want. So, for example, since this is a 1004MC comment, I can click on Quick Pick, go to 1004, and let's say I want to pull maybe the age, past year, the average. If I click on that, you'll notice it puts it at the end here in brackets, and now we're going to pull that for every report. You'll just write the sentence around the words however you want it to pull. So we typed in a search of the, and then we went to Quick Picks. We hovered over subject, and then we clicked on MLS, and it's right there now. So you'll want to visit these later. They can take a little while to set up initially, but they're definitely worth it. They save you a lot of time in the long run. Definitions. This is just a page of definitions used in the Genie. They do come from the Appraisal Institute or the Dictionary of Real Estate Appraisal. This will automatically be put in your work file. If you want to copy and paste these, put them in your report maybe, or if you just want to have it, it's going to be in the work file later. Graphs. Now graphs are optional. It's up to you whether you want actual graphs in the report. If you do want graphs, this is graph 1. You will click below and choose month, quarter, or year, and choose the type of graph you want below. So if you want a graph based on maybe the dollar per square foot or the percentage of concession contribution, maybe you want a histogram, whatever you set right here is graph 1, and this will be in the work file. So I'm not going to change this. I'm not going to save it. I already had quite a few set here, and I will come back to this later. And one last thing to note, the graphs are based on the 1004MC, your true comp search. So the entire neighborhood is not going to be influenced by these graphs. It's just the narrow 1004MC chart. So we'll go to password. And very simply, the Genie password you create at the beginning to sign up, if you need to change that, just enter it here, repeat it, and click Save. Alright, so that's the gist of the defaults page. You can come back to this at any point. If you need to change a default, I will show you how to do that. Once you're done with the defaults here, we need to go ahead and start the report. So once again, you have a forward and backward arrow. We're going to click forward all the way over. You will see a tab called Input. Input is basically your home page. That's where you go to start a report. So we're going to click on Input. Okay, so we'll let that load. Okay, so once you do arrive to the input page, once again, if you need to go back to the defaults and change anything, just arrow back over all the way. Click on defaults, change anything, and then just come back over here to input. So what you see now is the page you will see from now on after you go through the Genie the very first time. At the top here, you're going to have your subject information. The parcel and legal number, if that's not in the report, we will pull that and put it in there for you. So as you see here, it's not in my report, it's empty. What you're going to do is follow this page top going down. So there is a video here. I believe the video is a little bit outdated. You can always go to appraisergenie.com and watch this webinar or a more recent one. First, we're going to enter the effective date of the report, so we're going to go ahead and just choose today. Next, we need to select the form we're using. The forms at the top are UAD. If you scroll down, the non-UAD are at the bottom. This is a single-family 1004 UAD. MLS acronym. Now, this is going to be set to whatever I have in my defaults, and RIAR is one I typed in earlier to test. This specific address we used Intrace with, so I'm just going to click on Intrace. That needs to have the right MLS acronym, because when you put this inside Genie later, the export I showed you, if it's not the right acronym, it's not going to map right and things won't show up. So that's why we set up your MLS specific to your MLS. Right here is cost approach. Now there's a yes or no option. It depends on if the lender requires it in the report. If they do want cost approach in there, you leave it on yes. Regardless, we use cost approach to calculate depreciation and a few other things, so we will always use it. If you don't want it in the report, change it to no, but either way you'll have a full backup for that. These are also optional. You have the REO addendum, quantitative REO addendum, and listing addendum. If these apply to the report, you can check them here. If not, leave them deselected. Now, you don't have to have these addendums in the report. So, for example, if you wanted us to provide the quantitative REO, if it's not in the report, we will make the addendum for you. Alright, so referring back to the file I showed you guys earlier as far as logging into my MLS and creating a search, once again it's still open. This file is my neighborhood search based on the subject I'm using. I didn't use very many boundaries. I just went back 1 year, grabbed all my statuses, and I changed it to single family homes, no condos, nothing like that. That's pretty much all I did other than a 2-mile radius, and that's my boundaries. So that's ideally how you will do it. You can go back farther than a year if you want to use regression analysis. You can go back up to 5 years, whatever seems fit for the search. Now what we're going to do is we're going to want to narrow that search down. because if we don't, that all is going to comprise of the 1004 and that would be inaccurate. So what we do is we use these parameters on the left. So for example, maybe I want my comps to return within 35% plus or minus my subject site size. If you put a 35% here, then we're going to go ahead and look through this file and we're going to kick out any comps that are not within 35% of my subject site size plus or minus. The ones that don't meet the criteria, they'll of course stay in my neighborhood analysis, but they won't be in the 1004MC and they won't be in my true comp search. So I have over, I believe, 272, so I'm definitely going to narrow this down. If I leave a 0 there, I'm just not narrowing it by that specific field. I don't care about stories, so I left a 0. Age, I'm okay with, I left a 0. Now GLA, I do want to narrow, same as site, so I'm going to put 35 here, and that's going to reduce that to 35% plus or minus my subject. The rest of this I generally don't care about. Definitely don't put something in every box. You definitely can narrow it far too much to where your 1004MC would be completely inaccurate or you wouldn't have enough comps to choose. So I'm just going to start with this for now. Next is reconciliation weighting. This is very simple. You score 1 through 10, 10 being most similar between the three methods: cost approach, sales comparison, and income approach. If you need help, there is a blue question mark here. That is the use path requirement between the three methods. I did put a 10 here, so I just want to assign the full weight to sales comparison approach. It is up to you. You can divide the weight. Maybe you want an 8 here and a 2 here. That's fine. It just needs to add up to 10 in total. Next, we have highest and best use. This section is pretty straightforward. You have your current use, which is residential, possible use, which is also residential, and multifamily does display as a default, but if that's not applicable, you can just click the down arrow, click on the blank space, and it will kick it out. Land comp sales. Now, most appraisers, I've only seen 1 or 2 maybe that have ever completed this section, and all it is if you need manual land data to be reconciled. So for example, if the appraiser has raw land sales to be reconciled, they can enter it here. So if you have the address, maybe the sales price, site size, etc., you just enter all that information here. You can assign a weighting to it, and that will contribute to your land sales. And once again, I've only seen this very rarely used, but it's there if you need to. Same thing with square foot method. Any of these boxes that are green, you do have the option of editing or entering your own data. This is really only used though if you're a Marshall and Swift user. So if you do subscribe to Marshall and Swift, you just manually transfer their data to these boxes here so we can consider that information. If you don't use Marshall and Swift or you were hoping to get rid of it, you can leave this entire bottom section blank and we'll fill it out using buildingcost.net automatically. So I'm just going to use buildingcost.net and leave that blank. Now that I've scrolled all the way down to the bottom of the page, we'll scroll back to the top, and that's all you do. You just go all the way to the bottom, fill out anything you need to. The next step is there's a button on the left-hand side. It says Start New Report. We need to click on this now. And all we're going to do is we're going to look for the MLS file that I saved earlier from my computer. If you're not sure how to export from your MLS, by the way, you can watch a video on our website, click on the MLS Mapped tab, or you can call our tech support, our MLS department. We're so familiar with them, we can show you in a few seconds how to do it. So I've already completed that step. This is the file I showed you guys earlier, so I'm just going to double click on it. What we're going to do is scrub that MLS export. We're going to narrow it down based on this site size and this age parameter. And we're also going to make sure everything's UAD compliant. If there's any erroneous data, we kick that out and we format it for you. What you see here is your subject information. What we did is we took the page 2, this subject information, and all we did is we transferred that here for your review. This gets sent to buildingcost.net. They do return the total replacement cost based on the subject zip code. So you will want to look through here, make sure everything is accurate. If it's not, you can modify or change whatever you need. Buildingcosts.net, this is their Q rating system. So for example, if you choose Q4, buildingcosts.net is going to deem that average. Same thing with the condition rating, Q4 is average. And that is important to note. If you incorrectly assign a quality rating, your adjustments can be way too high or versus too low. So just make sure you have this set accurately. If you're not 100% sure, on average, if you feel it's closer to good, you can go ahead and change it to that. It's up to you though. Everything else looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and click Next. Now we're going to go ahead and take you to the narrowed search. So remember earlier I did narrow that by site and GLA. This little pop-up you guys won't see. But what you will see is this counter at the top. So it's telling me I have 113 in total. I have 19 actives, 93 sold, and 1 pending. And if we go back here, we had over 272. So just by narrowing it by site and GLA, I took it down to 113. So the 93 solds and the 19 actives, that's going to make up my 1004 MC within the last year. The solds alone, the 93, we will use that for your regression analysis and your matched pair analysis. So if you ever get to this point and you feel like you want more solds here, maybe to provide a better regression analysis, all you do is click back on this input tab and just widen up those parameters, and it should change this number here if you need more solds. We do recommend you have at least 100 solds. That's not possible for everyone. If regression doesn't work for you because of your area, then it just doesn't work for you. You'll also have to support the backup if regression was able to be run, and then of course for extraction, allocation, and match pairs. So for extraction and allocation, for those adjustments, we only use the subject and the comps you choose for the report. So keep that in mind. That's how the analysis is done at this point. And once again, if you feel it's off or it's not going to provide accurate information, you just click on input, widen the parameters up. That will change this here. So a little bit to note on this page. Firstly, the top going down, so starting with mossy oak, this is the ordering. We put it in closest proximity to the subject, most recently sold, then least adjusted. So theoretically, if you narrow it pretty well and you get good information here, you feel it's going to produce an accurate 1004, etc., the best comps should be towards the top. I already have a few comps that I'm interested in picking out, but I'm going to show you guys a couple more things. Earlier I told you you can reorder the fields, so you'll notice there's a horizontal bar at the bottom. If you just grab it and go over, there's a ton of information here for every comp. And these are the column headers I was referring to in which you can reorder them. So if you remember, I put site first, followed by age, GLA, year built, sales price. I always want to see these immediately in that order. So if you set it up in the defaults, it will display however you want here. I do recommend you do that. Otherwise, you're going to have to go back and forth constantly to look at whatever information you need. Now, if you don't want to use our ordering as far as closest proximity to the subject, most recently sold, least adjusted, you can click on these column headers and it will reorder it. So for example, let's say you want to order sales price maybe lowest to highest or vice versa. You can click on that. And it looks like it's going lowest to highest, so it has your actives, which is an A. So of course actives don't have a sales price. They will float to the top. Then you can click it again. And it should go highest to lowest. So here's my highest sales price, and of course the sold is an S. A means active, if there are any, which there were. So here's my A's, and if there's a pending, that will list in here unless it's listed as an active. So if you change this around and decide you want to go ahead and revert back to the ordering, you can click on Reset Sort Order. It will load, and it's going to put it in the ordering the page was naturally in. Now, if you get to this point, you shouldn't have any outliers in here, but if you're looking through it, maybe there's a $500,000 property in here, you know, and the subject's only $200,000, or the neighborhood is averagely $250,000, whatever the case is, you can get rid of it at this point. So, for example, if you wanted to kick this out, you just check on it, click the check mark, click on Delete Selected Comps, If you click yes, it's going to remove it from this page. That way it doesn't affect any of this. It won't affect any of your analysis, regression, etc. So what we're going to do now is we want to choose the comps we want to use for the report. If you already have them in mind, you can hit Control F on your keyboard. You'll notice at the top in the corner there's a little pop-up box. You can just type in the street number, and as you see in orange down here, it highlights it to wherever it is on the page. That is very handy if you have quite a few comps here, or if you already know which ones you're looking for. So I'm going to check that and go to the next one. I like 771 Lateral Shores, and one more. 1309 Lakeview. Okay, so you can grab as many as 15 if you use total. I'm only going to grab 3 solds. This is just a demonstration. I've already picked these out. So I have the 3 solds, and I have a counter here that tells me I've grabbed 3 solds. Now once I have the comps I want to use, I'm going to go ahead and click Next. And this is going to load. And lastly, we'll be taken to one more page called the side-by-side. We're going to take the 3 comps I chose for the report, and this is where public records, MLS, and our peer database come in. So once this loads, we'll go to that page and we'll choose between MLS, public, or peer if there's any discrepancies. Okay, so this pop-up box right here is telling me for address 1772 Crooked Branch, for age, my MLS is saying it's 31 years old, public is saying 32, and my peer is saying 31. So if there's a value in this peer database, then previous user, either myself or other appraisers, we averagely went with 31, which is MLS. So all our peer database does is report non-proprietary info. It gives you a running average of what other appraisers do in the Genie. So if you feel your MLS is more accurate, you can click on Use MLS. If you feel public is, click that one. Peer, you can click that one. If you click the bottom boxes, if there's any more discrepancies, then you're just going to click on these if you just want to use MLS for the rest, public for the rest, or peer. I don't generally recommend using these because there's just so many discrepancies sometimes depending on where you are. I would go through them individually. So for example, this one I'm going to use public. It's going to load to the next one. So stories also had a discrepancy. It was either 2 from MLS, 1.5 from public, or peer. So maybe I want to use MLS for this one. And those were my only 2 discrepancies. So that's how it works. It will apply whatever I chose to this page. Now what I'm going to go through now is on the left-hand side you have your subject, which is 731 Lateral Shores Drive. If you scroll down, all the information that is entered comes from me entering it in my report. Or maybe I forgot site size. We will try to pull public records for the subject as well. So any of this you can change. For example, maybe you entered the wrong room count. You can erase that and put an 8 there, whatever the case is. And if that affects any adjustments, then we will go ahead and update this entire page for you. So this is not in stone. You will definitely change some of this sometimes, especially if you feel you can't rely on MLS or peer maybe. Maybe you want to type your own information in. You can do that, and it will recalculate the adjustments for you. So using this horizontal bar, this is my first comp I chose, 771 Lateral Shores. The little pink boxes just means I chose public records. So earlier when I told the comp or Genie to use public for garage or stories, whatever it is, that's why it's showing up pink. It's not an error, it's just saying public records were used. So all the information filled in here that comes from MLS, public, or peer. And it's very easy to read. So here's my heating and cooling for this comp here, 771. All I have to do is look straight across. Here's my subject's heating and cooling, and here's my column header. So we'll go straight across to make sure all 3 are in there. Here is 1772 Crooked Branch, and lastly 1309 Lakeview. Now you may notice there is some data kind of scrawled in between here. This Genie peer database, once again, if these comps have already been ran through the Genie by you or other appraisers, we will show you the last value used, the average. So for example, I think it goes behind one. Here we go. 2231, which is the GLA that's been used, so that's why that reflects this number here. If they entered anything manually, if this did have a basement maybe and they took the time to enter it themselves, it will show you the value here. It will say, 1,500 square feet or 300 square feet if it's a basement, and then you can choose to use that here or retrieve it yourself, whatever you want to do. Last time the garage was two-car garage attached and then two-car driveway, which is the same thing here. Now that could be really helpful, especially if you're in a more rural area, maybe Wisconsin or somewhere where appraisers do use the system and you guys kind of manually enter it, because there are some places where public does not return, and that just depends on where you are. But if you take the time to correct it in Genie, you're helping yourself the next time or anyone else who uses it. So for example, what we're going to do now, you're going to notice there's numbers scrawled through in the middle. This left-hand side is a black adjustment header, and if you scroll down, this just tells you the type of adjustments Genie gives you. This is the time per month. This is your land value. This is age, bath, etc. You do not have to use all of these adjustments. Whether you use them or not, the Genie is still going to give you the support for it, so it's up to you. Now, if you want us to actually make the adjustment in the grid, you have to click on them. So for example, this is site. So 14,200 is my allocation land value, 25.5 is extraction, and regression is 87.57. Now as stated, regression could be skewy if you don't have quite a few solds. It's up to you. If you do want to use it, you'll notice there are tabs all the way across the top of the page now. And let's say I want more information on regression here. You can click on regression. Now this is a lot of calculus and whatnot that I don't explain because I don't know a lot about it, but what you can do here is any regression adjustment, it will give you like the $82 per square foot if you want to make a GLA. If it's negative, then obviously you're not going to use a negative bed adjustment for regression, so anything in positive based on the data set for the solds produced a positive adjustment, and it's up to you whether you use them or not. But you'll still have all this in your work file. So if you later on want to see which comps actually went into this data set as far as regression, we'll break that down here and give you every address that was used. And this will all be placed in your work file, and we do recommend at least 100 solds. So it's up to you. Now if I want more information on site, meaning land, we can click on this. And if we scroll down right here, we have land extraction method. This middle section is going to give you your comp information and the info we use for the subject. And it will show you the extraction land value. If any formulas are used, it's very easy to read. So for example, B minus C minus D minus C, this is B, C, D, E, and we give you the formula, which is F. So they're not hard to read. Allocation method. This one's a little different. We actually pull your assessor total value, or excuse me, the assessor improvement value and the land value, which gives you the total value. We pull that for the subject, as you see in the boxes, and the comps you choose for the report here. Now you do not have to use this if you are, maybe your county records are 2 years behind or it's new construction and they don't have it. Whatever the case is, you can actually type in your own info here and we will update an allocation land adjustment. So here's my adjustment here, which is what we saw on the other page, which is called side by side. This will also just be converted into a PDF and put in the work file. And I'll show you a few more. Here's allocation. Now allocation here is a little different. Reason being is this is the total replacement cost being 100, and 61.7 is what I told you guys earlier as far as the Home Builders Association. We rounded that up to 62, and they contribute 62% to GLA less anything else as far as the total replacement cost. So all we do is we take that number, we put that into this average dollar per square foot, which is market driven. It's based off of the comps you chose for the report and the subject. So this 97 right here comes down here. And we have to scroll over. And right at the end here it says dollar per square foot, and we just average these values out, which gives you this value here. And of course, you know, those may or may not be the best comps to choose. If they're incredibly different or whatever the case is, you'll want to look at that. So we'll scroll back up. And that value is transferred here. So we took 62% into this, and that gives you a $60 per square foot GLA adjustment for allocation. And here's your $5,000 garage space based on allocation. So there's a full breakdown as far as full bath, half bath, heating and cooling, appliances, flooring. This will all be in your work file. If you want a porch, patio, uncovered deck, those typically have a percentage there, and then at the end you'll see the value for the adjustment. So we will go back to the side-by-side. The side-by-side is basically the grid where you click on the adjustments. So we'll click side-by-side. Alright, so what we need to do now is if there are any adjustments that we want to make in the grid, we need to click on them. So for example, I'm going to make this side adjustment based on allocation. If you click on it, it turns blue. And when you go straight across, you'll have your first comp site, and if there's an adjustment, there'll be a value here. Now, I believe I put not to adjust for 30% site difference in my defaults. So if you put a default there and it falls in that parameter or that percentage, it will not adjust, obviously. But it will adjust for anything over that. So it looks like my comps were pretty well within 30%. So go back. And let's say I want to make an age adjustment. Here is age. If I look right here and go up, that is based on extraction. That's per year. So this should make an adjustment. Actually, I don't remember if I put a default, but we'll see. So we'll click this. It's going to load. And yes, so it made a 2-year difference for age, 1400 plus 1400. And it just takes the age, and then it makes an adjustment. Now, these will be in the grid. The ones I don't click on will not. If you don't want to make a bath adjustment, maybe you don't care to make a bedroom, whatever the case is. GLA, I'm going to go with 50. This is $50 per square foot based on extraction. Turns blue. Here's my GLA, and there's my adjustment per square foot. So that's how it works. Very easy to use. These are all the same FWA CAC. There's no adjustment needed there. And fireplace, I believe they all have a fireplace. They do. And as you'll notice, fireplace is at the top right here. So this is blank row 1, blank row 3, blank row 2. Now fence and covered patio, that will never give you an adjustment in the grid. We give you this in the support. If you later on want to go back and make a covered patio adjustment, we'll tell you allocation came to 3,200, or fence will show you 1,300. And the reason being is most MLSs do not tell us if the comp has a fence or a patio. It just depends. Now if you're done and you don't want to click on any other adjustments, we'll scroll back up. And you'll notice under each comp there's a button in red and a button in blue. We can click on Realtor. And if your MLS gives us any list or agent, sell information, remarks, we'll show that here. My MLS only gives me the list agent name and sell agent name. And you can click on tax, and we will give you the tax information here. Alright, so that's the gist of it. Once you've clicked on all the comps you want to use or adjustments you want to make, we can click on Export to Report. We're going to send all this information we created in the Genie back to Total, and we're going to let this load, so you don't need to do anything here. Now you should have a pop-up box in a moment after this progress bar loads. You'll have a data wizard by Total. We need to wait for that. Okay, so this data wizard is going to give you the option to merge into a currently open report, which is what we will do. Once again, make sure you have the right one selected. Generally, you're going to want to replace the data in my open report. Keep in mind, if you already have things filled out we're supposed to fill out, like the 1004MC, cost approach, comp grid, we don't overwrite that if you leave it on keep. So you don't have to start with a blank report by any means, but if you don't, definitely leave it on replace or the data will not export to Total. If you have a sketch, you'll want to check that. If not, deselect it and click import. Alright, so at the bottom you'll see Total is highlighted orange, which means you're good to go. We're going to ignore this pop-up box here for now. So we're going to go down here and look at our grid. Okay, so as you see here, I had my default set to MLS Assessor, followed by the list price, and Genie just literally pulls the list price. Your MLS acronym, your MLS number, days on market, that will be displayed here. You'll notice quality and condition is blank. We don't actually give you guys a quality and condition adjustment, so you can take the time to manually put that in Genie, and we will transfer it back here or leave it blank, up to you. Looks like none of mine have basements, which I believe is correct. And you'll see porch and patio, I left that blank in my defaults, which is why it's blank in here. And same thing with row 2. I left it blank, and that's why it's blank here. And you'll notice fireplace came across neatly across in blank row 1, and my pool came across in blank row 3. Hey, just a couple of other things. If we do find any prior sales, we will list that here. Now I'm sure you're asking what First American is. First American is where we pull public records from. They do own ACI, I believe. We used to use Realist, but their service was too intermittent. It would go down pretty much off and on, so we use First American. If you have questions, just look up First American, of course. We'll go down to Cost Approach. Cost Approach will be displayed here. Porch and patio was carried over. No basement. Basement typically goes here, so that will be blank. Of course, if there's physical depreciation, that'll be pulled here. It depends. We need to go to market conditions. Now this is filled out for you, and this is an example of one of the comments I advise you guys would be in there by default. So this is your concession comment. You can change that. You can add to it. Do whatever you guys like. Otherwise, this is how it will display for each report. Of course, your trends are checked. This is all filled out based on that narrowed search I had, which was 113 comps, give or take. Now what I'm going to show you guys next is the bulk of what we do. You will have a work file tab in Total, so you'll want to click on this. Now all the tabs that we saw in Genie have been converted to a PDF, so we did look at the allocation. You'll see that here, it's just converted. And there goes my percentages from earlier, 97. Everything else is displayed here. Same thing with cost. Cost comes from buildingcosts.net, so we will give you the cost approach value. We will give you the entire breakdown as far as the subject information related to material, labor, equipment, and total. So there's a lot of information here for every report. This will return the basement square footage, and of course down here you have your gross cost method, which is GLA, percentage of cost, garage, porch and patio, their values, square foot, dollar per square foot. If the graphs do make any information, they'll be displayed here. This just kind of depends on how large your data set is as far as the 1004MC. Some of them have came up blank for me, but that's usually when I have like 9 solds, maybe 3 actives, really rural information. Genie definitions, that's a page of definitions for your use. Extraction, if you ever have any kind of question on extraction or anything we produce based on extraction, here's your average dollar per square foot. You can look through here and we will show you the comps so you know which ones were used, of course. And this is all here for every report. So if I do want to put one of these in the report, let's say I like reconcile. Reconcile is really cool. This is 241. This is based on my sales comparison value. So on my report, it's going to say 241 under sales comparison approach. What's incorporated into this number is the weighted by quantity of adjustments, weighted by net dollars, weighted by gross dollars. We average these 3 values out to produce this. And this is dependent on you. So for example, if you see this value and you feel it's too high or too low, you can change this around. This all depends on the quantity of adjustments you make, the type of comps you choose. There may be better ones out there, that sort of thing. This is totally dependent on that. You'll have a breakdown of weighted by quantity of adjustments, weighted by net dollars, and of course weighted by gross dollars. And below is your weighted analysis. So cost approach typically runs under sales comparison, but I have seen it higher. And this is what's going to be entered into my report. So we'll go back to forms. If I can remember where it is, I know it's somewhere in here. Right here. So 241 is entered here, 217 is entered here. So what you guys can do, and by the way, it sold for 214. That's pretty close. You guys can go through here. We can click back on work file, and if you do want to put one of these in the report, you click on the one you want. So we'll click on reconcile, go to insert as page, name it whatever you want. I'm going to go with reconcile Click OK. And we'll click back on Forms, and at the very end, it's in my report now. All right, so I'm going to unmute everyone. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask me. If you want a breakdown on these adjustments, I do actually have a PDF that will show you the formulas used. So for example, this PDF here will break down any matched pairs. Let me try to make it, kind of looks weird right now. There we go. So we show you the entire process from the back end. As far as importing the MLS, we geocode the address, we verify with Postal Service, and it tells you any formulas that were used for GLA, basement, whatever you need. So does anyone have any questions? I don't think anyone has a mic in here, am I right? If so, you guys can just send me a chat message. No one has any questions today? I'd be happy to help with anything. If you guys have questions about MLS setup, email mls@appraisergenie.com, or you can call our sales line at 325-704-2592, or email info@appraisergenie.com. All right, if there's no questions today, thank you guys so much for participating, and hopefully we will get you guys set up pretty quickly, and if you have any questions, let us know. Thank you. Have a great day.